Oh, that's not right. That's not right. I'm just kidding. Yes, it is. That's right. No, I only give her a hard time because before, my name is so hard to pronounce. Y'all have seen it, right? And so she asked me, and then they have my titles like all jumbled and weird, and so that was perfect. I had to give you a hard time. No, I know. You did great. I just had to give her a hard time. She's like, I'm done with this. I'm done. I'm sorry. You did so good. That was the first time I've been introduced correctly, so that was awesome. That was great. So we're talking about total cost of ownership today, and it's a little bit different, I think, than the other presentations that are here, but I want to tie it back to systems and document management, GIS and BIM, and so we'll talk a little bit about that in the 30 minutes that I have, now 28 minutes. So total cost of ownership, it is an APA 1000 standard, and we have released the key principles of January of last year. And so you can purchase that through APA if you're a member of APA. If not, get in touch with me and I'll let you know how you can purchase that. Phase 2, which is implementation, is now almost going live. I think it's going live next week. So for public review, if you are a member of APA, it will be free for you there. And if you aren't a member, they do and are going to charge you some money for that, but I welcome you to take a look at that, and it's going to go out for public review. So we're going to talk about what is total cost of ownership and how it aligns with document management. So what is total cost of ownership? And then I'm going to try to touch in a little bit of implementing TCO in regards to some of the technology that's used there. So we all are here because we are in facilities at universities, and we're trying to figure out the best way to manage those facilities. And we have tools today. We have FCI, we have predictive analysis, and we have all these tools that we're here and we use today to be able to do that. And here's some radical approaches in terms of doing facilities management. Before I do that, has anyone seen me present on total cost of ownership before in this room? Yes. We know that. Yes. Okay, so just don't laugh, or please laugh again at my jokes, or don't ruin the jokes. That's all I ask. I'm not a very good storyteller or joke teller, so the ones that I do have, keep them for me. All right, so radical approaches. So the first radical approach that we have in our toolbox is get a new university. Right next door to us, there's a new university that gets built and we get to move over. That never happens, right? Yeah. Other thing that we are waiting for is the building to burn to the ground. And this building is actually on fire and flooding at the same time. And I apologize for the video quality, but it was from Facebook, and I thought it was perfect because I think there's a couple buildings on our campus, don't say anything, that we might want to see flooded and burned at the same time, right? So I'm offering another tool for you, total cost of ownership. So what is it? So here's the very long definition that we came up with, and if you go to public review, you can tell us how long it is and how it's crappy. You can tell us that if you would like. But I have broken it down into two sections. So the first section is the summation of all known and estimated costs. Total cost of ownership, by definition, is a summation of the costs. The second is to aid in life cycle asset management decisions, and that's where we'll talk about information sharing and the technology, how we can use those. So take a look at the first summation. This is the summation: initial costs, operating, utilities, renewal, end of life, sum them all together. That's total cost of ownership. Super easy, we're done. Let's go to happy hour. But let's take a look at how that applies. So I'm just going to give you an example of house. So as you purchase a new home, I recently did this about 4 years ago, so relatively recent, and I collected all the information from the person we were buying it and said, what are the expenses for the house? So what is your electric bill? What is your water? All those things. And they freely gave it to me. I wanted to make sure that the price that I was paying monthly plus those expenses didn't exceed what I wanted to pay. Well, they sent all of that to me, and in there they sent something that was a little bit different. And in the back where you couldn't see was a garden. There was a garden in the back behind this like chimenea, and they were spending about $250 to $300 a month for this garden. Needless to say, we purchased the house. There's no longer a garden in our backyard. I wasn't paying for that, but everything else seemed to be in alignment, and it was what I thought it was, what we were going to pay. Unlike a fountain, absolutely free to the university, right? The gift that keeps on giving, absolutely free. We have, if you've walked our campus, I hope they're on, but they're probably off. We have a number of fountains that are off because the moment that they're on, gallons, hundreds, thousands gets wasted because we can't maintain them in its appearance, and we have so many other needs on campus. We can't fix our fountains. So it's in that same way. Some universities are now saying, we're not accepting gifts in the form of fountains anymore or other gifts for that reason. All right, so let's get into the meat of it. Aid in the life cycle asset management decision. Let's do this slide next. I'm just trying to be cognizant of time. So this isn't all of total cost of ownership, but for the purpose of simplicity, there's project delivery, maintenance and operations, and recapitalization. So the way that total cost of ownership works in terms of documents and technology and information, we have project delivery. That information gets sent over to maintenance and operations. Whether that's a PDF, whether that's a piece of paper, or whether you take that all the way to Kobe or other super fun, slick way, you get that information over to maintenance. Maintenance then logs that asset, and maintenance starts doing preventive maintenance, trouble calls, and they assign cost to it. At some point, whether the equipment breaks or someone's screaming and squealing, or there's some sort of trigger, that's when we replace it. It's very unlikely that we would replace it at the time that it ages, right? It's very unlikely. We don't do that at our university. And then that information gets fed back into our standards. And so, for example, it might be that can't work at our campus that's near the ocean, right? Because that type of design doesn't work for that environment. Or the equipment was just a lemon, and that's why it wasn't involved. What's important about this is, for this conference, is the ability of all the technology to work together to be able to do that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So information sharing. You gather information in planning. You get a certain amount of information from the client, you get it from designers, and then we pass that off to design, construction, and maintenance. And these gaps here represent our current approach and our paper approach and the valleys and the loss of information that we don't transfer over to each of the individual groups. What we would like to do, because every piece of information is electronic, is move that to where the information builds upon each other and is able to be carried on. What I couldn't fit on this slide, because it keeps going, is decisions that are made here in planning impact not just maintenance, but our ability to then have societal impact to the students who are learning, and also to our bottom line budget. Are we able to retain employees? Now, how would that decision in planning help us to maintain employees? I'll give you an example. So at UT Austin, don't tell anyone I shared this with you. About 5 to 7 years ago, we would only install pneumatic systems in new buildings. Why would we do that? We've always done it. Number one reason was maintenance didn't know how to maintain anything else because we've always done it. So that decision that we made in planning to put that building with a pneumatic system, and pneumatic just basically means it's an old-timey system. Now we do everything electronic with technology. It's the old way of doing things, and quite frankly, if we asked for that today, a contractor would probably pay us more because I don't even think they make them anymore, or they can't find the parts for it. But nonetheless, so that decision that we made here to put that in, that has an impact on our hiring ability for people who want to come work for UT. They come on our campus, they get hired, they go, where's all the cool new stuff? Because I know UT's changing the world. Oh. You have pneumatics. Awesome. They're not going to stay. So those decisions have a big, larger impact on our campus and our university. So Walmart has the largest civilian database in the United States. They know what's coming into their system or to their buildings, and they know what's coming out. Chiclets, right by the cash register, they know how many people are buying that. So here's my joke if you've heard it before. Remember. Okay, so a hurricane's coming to hit a town, and Walmart's like, well, what should we stock that Walmart with? They have other stores that have been hit before along the coast, but it's coming to this town, and they're going, well, what should we stock it with? But we know, right? What should they stock it with? Water? Batteries? Formula? Socks. Who said socks? I've not heard that before.
Well, then you didn't help the people from the hurricanes like I had.
Oh, wow. That's pretty impressive.
You got rising water, Katrina in New Orleans. You got rising water from Harvey. What do you need? You need
Socks, because they're wet. That is genius.
I called the
Love
radio
it.
station and said, please send socks to the Astrodome.
I love it. That's so great.
So,
Well,
tell Walmart
I will tell that. So, well, they didn't know they needed them, so they didn't buy them at Walmart. So Walmart, yeah, there you go. I don't know. I'm trying to go along with that here. So they went into the data and they said, well, what did sell? Number one was batteries. I think Igor said that. Great job. Number two was beer. Close to water, and if you weren't at a conference, you probably would have said beer. Number three was Pop-Tarts. So I don't know if they were frosted or strawberry. Those are my favorite. But whatever they were, that's what people bought. So I liken that to the information that you collect and store in your systems in the technology that's accessible to you during a catastrophic event, during any event at your university. Do you know where the Pop-Tarts are in your organization? There are staff at our organization that have been there for 20 plus years, 10 plus years. They should know, right? Like all of you, what should we stock Walmart with? Socks wasn't even on there. But maybe they had enough of that. I don't know. What are the Pop-Tarts on your campus? And that's really the essence of the second part. The first part of TCO is just the summation of information, and the second part is gathering and collecting that information and visually representing it to the technician all the way up to leadership to help them make decisions. All right, so here are the principles. There are 13 of them. And what I want to highlight here is the integrity piece. So asset information sharing, asset reporting, data management, and verification. That is what the whole total cost of ownership rests on. That's why we've made this triangle. It says we cannot do anything with total cost of ownership without this. That plays into technology solutions, document management in the largest way. You have to have information in order for this to work. It has to be accessible. These things have to work. You look like you had a comment or question? Nope. Foundation, what assets are you managing? House it somewhere. Assign a location That could be GIS, or that could be it's on the corner of 24th and Speedway. Asset classification, uniformat. Information gathering, that's where you're collecting costs, the asset inspection pieces, how it's performing, and then you make the decisions based on that. All of this is so intertwined, and we're going to take a look at that, implementing TCO. So you have managed assets. We need to house them somewhere in our asset inventory. Assigning an asset classification or an asset location information is critical unless you're just managing one asset. How many of you are managing just one asset? This is where all the documents come in and play into that asset inventory. And you'll notice some of the same principles are listed here that then feed into our design and construction standards, that then help us have financial reports, that then help us have asset decisions and comprehensive plans. There are some, that cut my stuff off up there, but that says condition monitoring over that, and then project document information. So that's maintenance, project management, the asset condition. That can be through assessments or fault diagnostic, FDD. And then your costing information up there, your master files, those can be in CAD or BIM, and then your real estate documents that then feed into other items. At UT, I'm going to be pretty honest. So today, we don't have a great place to store master files. We don't have a process to feed back into our AE firms so that they can edit those and send them back to us. We don't have that. Our costing information is in our CMMS system, in addition to our maintenance information. We do have a document management system, not the best in terms of finding things, could be better. Our project management information is in our CMMS system, but our condition asset, our asset inspection information is in a totally different system. Is that a bad thing that they're in a different system? Igor says this.
If it's not integrated, that's bad.
If it's not what?
If they are not integrated, they can be in different systems, but they need to be integrated.
Exactly, which is why this comes into play, right? You have to have an identification of that asset that you're tracking. So let me give you an example. So, in our main tower roof, our signature tower, that tall thing, there are 22 different roofs on that tower because of the different heights, different material, right? Built-up roof lasts about 20, 25 years. Clay tile, 75. We might have some metal roofs on there as well. So each of those individual roofs, do we track those separately? Do we track that as one? How are we going to track that? And is that the same in our maintenance system as it is in our project management system, as it is in our asset system? So Igor is exactly right. As long as we're able to integrate and talk the same language, it doesn't necessarily matter that they're in a different system. As long as they're integrated, it definitely helps. But what's most important is that you have the key that you can join those later. Technology now has advanced so much that APIs, and we can join them with Tableau or other Cognos reporting tools, as long as this is all in the same language. At UT, we don't have that. So in my VFA system, I use Uniformat, and I go down to like level 30, D3010, so level 4 on for HVAC for that. But in our maintenance doc, they use Uniformat as well, but I don't have a join, and the people who input the data can go in and put chilled water pump, or they can put CHP. So try joining that information with my condition assessment data when nothing is kind of similar, right? So very, very, very difficult. Does anybody do this really well at their institution today? What's stopping you from doing it at your university?
Resources and costs.
Resources and cost?
Different departments want to keep doing it their own way.
Yes. We are a big institution, so I resemble that so much. It is very difficult for us to talk to each other in terms of the data that we have. And that comes from siloing in some regards. The mentor that I had, he's no longer with us, and he is the king of TCO. He was doing TCO at Brigham Young in the 1980s, and his name was Doug Christensen. So I'm going to try to say his name as much as possible. He's not with us, but he was my mentor, and I'm carrying this on for him. And he stood up in front of many people, in front of lots of presentations, and he had thoughts about things and about technology and what we could do back in the 1980s, where people thought, he's kind of crazy, right? So he stood up in front of a presentation and he said, silos are good. Everybody's saying silos are bad. He said, I think silos are good. He was not helping his case that people thought he was crazy. But what he said next was genius. He said, silos, by definition, are designed to hold grain. And different silos are designed to hold different types of grain, and you don't want them to mix, right? So he said silos are good in that the maintenance group does a very good job, and they are experts in maintenance. And it's rare that you can get a technician to go into the project management silo and do that work well without lots of training, right? And vice versa. So those are cylinders and silos of expertise. What he did say was what we needed to not tear down the silos, keep the silos, but tear down the walls of the silos such that those walls are invisible so that information, that's right, it can be shared all across, not just at the bottom, not just at the top, but throughout the organization. And that's where technology, the systems that we have, the management of how we put that together, all can help us to do that, is make those walls invisible, share that information across. There are two things that I think help an organization promote change, and I think it applies to this, thinking about these silos, right? So one is, what's in it for me? Everybody knows that. How are you going to make my job easier? How are we going to do more with less? That's easy. The second thing is, how am I going to help somebody else? That's why TCO is, it takes a village. Because it's no longer, what are you doing for me? How's this making my job easier? It's now, how do we work together as an organization? How do we become together as a village to help each other? Project management starts off information. They feed into maintenance files, they feed into asset inspection, they feed into costs, and they give information to the maintenance group. They have to hand off that information. That's how all of this works together. This design and construction standards can't really be a living document without input from these folks. It can't be great. It also can't be great from lessons learned from the projects, right? It all has to feed in and be shared. Any questions so far on anything I've shared? We're just ready for Coopers and happy hour, right? The last thing I'll say, and this feeds into the foundation, so we're back at the triangle, and the triangle at the bottom cannot succeed without business processes for data management and verification. How do we make that information accurate and right? Creating that process and culture of collaboration, transparency, sharing, and accessibility. I have presented a lot on capital renewal and on total cost of ownership. And I used to start my presentation with, if you have all the money in the world, another crappy joke is coming. If you have all the money in the world, you should not be in this presentation. You should be across the hall. Because this presentation is about, if you don't have money to do what you need to do at your campus, I'm going to help you, show you what I did at my campus to succeed. Total cost of ownership helps you with that. Said that in a presentation, and a guy raised his hand and he said, well, I do have all the money in the world. I work for Great Britain. I work for the government, and I have billions and billions of dollars that they've left me in a trust fund. And I was like, what are you doing here? You just ruined my joke. Great, thanks. And he said, I want to do what's right. He said, I don't want someone to come in 5 or 10 years and I've just wasted that money and put it where it's not supposed to go. And for me, that resonated with, he wanted to find the Pop-Tarts. He wanted to find the place that was the best place to put the money that he had been left. He had a sense of stewardship. So no matter how much money you have, all the money in the world, or none at all, I think we can still make a difference using the tools and the technology that we have in addition to total cost of ownership. Thanks so much.
Maybe it'd be helpful for you to describe what other work you're doing with APA and your role in this for APA. That might be easy.
So my real job is working at UT Austin. So I manage their capital renewal among a couple of other pieces of that organization, but none of that's fun. What is kind of fun is this. So we, for the past 3 years, we've been writing a ANSI standard for APA. And I've co-chaired that. Doug was a member of that, and Deke. So now it's Deke and I. And there are 24 other members of that group that have helped us to write this total cost of ownership ANSI standard. And so that's what I'm working on with APA. I also teach in their institute and their academy as well. I'm happy to answer any questions about what we're doing at UT in regards to this. Not much. But I can help you see what we have done, what has been in our control. Let me see if I can get to the slide where I can at least put up my sorry, see? Only 30 minutes. Wow. There is, oh! I spelled my own name wrong. There it is. There it is. That should have an R. Gee, see? You just did great. I should have just had you do this. So there's an R after the E on the end. It's team@austin.utexas.edu.
In your work with APA, I don't know if you've had any exposure to campuses across the nation that are taking this approach, but from a data governance standpoint. It seems like the CDO, the Chief Data Officer, is becoming a thing. It's gaining some traction in the private industry as organizations are understanding how valuable their data is. Walmart certainly understands that. So have you seen any trends in any kind of somewhat leaders of the pack on the higher education side? Taking that approach of data governance, because you've got the CFOs, the senior facilities officers, so you've got finance, you've got risk, you've got O&M, you've got capital, PDC, but it's, again, keep those silos, keep those centers of excellence, but how is it all organizationally brought together?
This is really hard to answer because universities, including UT, are doing pieces of total cost of ownership well. And there's no roadmap or perfect, this is how you're supposed to implement TCO, which is hard for people because they want a checklist. So every institution is different. But in terms of the data management piece, I think for me, it's making sure your systems are set up such that you can share that across and it can be integrated, is something that is within this room's control, right? Then we can share that data to help make decisions. What institution is doing that well? We do that well in terms of our facility condition assessments, merging that somewhat with our maintenance data as much as I can, and then preparing financial reports to show risk to the university.
It just seems like like a chief data officer would be a great addition to the university's leadership.
Yes.
And their strategic vision. You talked about the planning decision affecting staffing. What's the cost of obtaining a student? What's the cost of having a student on their campus? How does that planning decision affect their willingness to stay enrolled?
I think that this is a multifaceted question that has multifaceted answer. And that's why it's hard, I think, for people to grasp on TCO, because they're just like, where do I get started? What do I do? But let's talk after. I'm 1 minute over, and I'm very cognizant of time. Whoever is presenting after me told me I should not go over.
Quick question. One of the slides, when you showed all these arrows, you put managed assets. What's the definition of managed versus unmanaged assets? Let's say in this room, most of the assets are unmanaged, right? Carpets and ceiling tiles, but they are expensive. Cleaning inspections here, they deal with unmanaged assets.
We define that as being, in the TCO APA standard, is assets that you're going to track. Whatever, and that could be different for everybody in here. And that goes back to the 22 versus the not. So if you're going to track this carpet in that asset with these data points, with all of that, then that's a managed asset. If you're not going to track it, then it's not managed. But it is still managed in the sense that facilities maintenance has to clean it, replace it, all of that. But in this term, we use it as those assets that we're tracking in that whole integrated approach.
Because carpets not typically tracked in CMS.
That's right.
But I'm sure that this room, for example, is going to cost much more over the next year to clean it up than to replace, lighting fixture bulbs.
So it's not tracked in CMMS. For us, though, it's tracked in my condition assessment. And then it's tracked in my maintenance, my custodial. Right? So you have to decide what you want to track. It goes a little bit broader than that. All right, if y'all have questions, email me, or we can chat after in the break. Thank you.